All right, let's bring in Chris Johnston this morning for Pro-Am Sports. Chris, I wonder, were you a fan of the American expansion in the Canadian Football League back in the day?
I was not. It felt a little bit sacrilege. Obviously, I was kind of a kid when that was happening, so I didn't probably have deep thoughts on it, but it felt a little weird. And that's why I was wondering, what is that jersey? Is that from that time?
Yeah, Birmingham Barracudas, Matt Dunnigan quarterback
wow.
For their lone maiden voyage, 95. But it's...
What else did we have? Was it Shreveport was a team, right? Shreveport Pirates?
Las Vegas Posse, the Sacramento Gold Miners who moved to San Antonio to become the Texans, the Memphis Mad Dogs, and then, of course, Baltimore. Who won the Grey Cup.
Won the Grey Cup there, yeah. I think
the logos were
you
cool,
described it perfectly, though, man. Weird. It was a weird time.
Sure.
It was a weird time, but
it honestly feels like that happened. Like it's a little bit of a fever dream. Like I'm like, is this something I'm remembering from my childhood, but it didn't actually happen? Is that real?
That's another good way to describe it. All right, Chris Johnston joins us on the show today for Pro-Am Sports. If you've not yet subscribed to the channel, please make sure you do. The Oilers, they had 47 shots last night. They lose in a shootout. First time all year they've gone to a shootout. You would understand in this city, people are like, oh, man, they blew 2-0 lead. It's the end of the world. But, I mean, Detroit is trending in the right direction here. Todd McClellan seems to have a pretty fast team. Like, they were quick last night, the Red Wings.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shame in losing to the Red Wings, I don't think. I mean, obviously, you don't want to lose any game. You're on home ice. You have the lead. But, the Wings have had kind of some mojo since, after the Christmas break. And, you make a coaching change on Boxing Day. It's a bit of a desperation move at that time because, obviously the Red Wings are trying to be in the playoff picture, and lo and behold, they've scratched and clawed their way back into that. So, it's hard for me to pick out positives from an Oilers perspective, but, I will say that you did lose to a team at least that has beaten a lot of teams here in the last month or so.
Do you think they're going to be able to get a good enough read on Klingberg before the deadline? Like you saw last night, he moves well. You can see flashes of why he was good offensively in the past. You can also see last night some flashes of why he put himself in a couple of tough spots along the way. Are you going to be able to know what you have, you think, in him prior to the deadline? Is that much time enough?
It's going to be tough because, it's 5 weeks today till the deadline, but 2 of those weeks there's no games to be played, at least in the NHL, because of that Four Nations break. And when someone has been off, as John Klingberg has, for 13 months, I mean, I don't even know what's a fair amount of time. I mean, in a normal circumstance, I'd say you got to watch him for a month or two. The Oilers don't necessarily have that luxury, although, there's not necessarily a pressing need. I mean, he can be someone who's in and out of the lineup. He could be a number 7-8 if they go and make another acquisition for the blue line, ahead of the March 7th trade deadline. So, perhaps they can kind of spot him in. But, he had a very, very significant invasive surgery. It's one that's had mixed results for other players, just in terms of the kind of career they had on the other side of it. I'm wishing him the best and certainly not out here trying to doubt him. But I do think it's fair to say at his age and after that kind of layoff, it's going to take some time.
Chris, from Detroit, and we know the kind of hockey they've been playing as of late, to the Maple Leafs, who are in town tomorrow night, and 4-6 in their last 10, dropping 3 in a row. What's the scout there on Toronto rolling into town for tomorrow on Hockey Night in Canada?
Well, they haven't been scoring. The last 3 games they've lost, each of those games they scored 1 goal in them. And, I'd say big picture, 10,000 feet for the Leafs. The problem is 75% of their offense this season has come from 6 players. 2 of those players right now are out of the lineup with injuries, and John Tavares and Matthew Nyes. We'll see if they get one or both of those guys back for the game. But, they are very, very top-heavy offensive team, and some nights that's good because they're guys like Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander all having pretty good offensive years. But as we know with any team, even your top players, don't score every night. Sometimes it's bounces luck. Sometimes they're just not feeling it, and the Leafs don't have much of a secondary attack now. So that's a big focus for them as we approach the deadline, is trying, I think, to help out those top guys. And so I don't know how to view it if you're on the Oilers end of this equation, because the Leafs are starting to feel a little heat in their own market. They haven't played a lot lately. They've had a pretty spaced out schedule. So there's not a lot of excuse, I would say, for them to have another poor effort. And they really have not played well the last week or so. So they're going to be pretty motivated for that game tomorrow.
Should we expect to hear some news on Brandon Saad today? And what's the latest in your opinion?
Today might be a little early, but he can sign officially as of this afternoon. It wouldn't surprise me if it takes a day or two, but he's not going to wait too long. Obviously, he walked away from $5.4 million. This is a pretty unusual circumstance. He could very easily have just accepted a trip to Springfield in the American Hockey League with St. Louis, collected a pretty good paycheck, and seen where things went from there. Instead, he agreed to terminate and rip up his contract. He's going to have a few contending teams that are interested in signing him for a cheap deal for the rest of this year. And he's going to have a decision to make. I know Toronto is one of them that'll at least be in the mix. He played for Craig Berube during his time in St. Louis and had a lot of success doing so. But I don't imagine the Leafs will be alone there. And ultimately, Saad will probably pick a team, I think, it's in for the rest of the season, and then hope to boost his stock, heading into free agency and, make back some of that money basically with a future deal this summer. But, the fact he's willing to walk away from the money, I do think is an encouraging sign probably for teams looking at signing him, because it says to you, there's still a hunger there. He wants to win. He wants to be in the NHL, and money isn't his main priority at this stage of his career.
Lots can happen in a week, Chris, as we all know. A trade last night between the Flames and Flyers. I wanted to pick your brain and thoughts on that Rantanen deal last Friday evening, I guess, dumping that on everybody's laps. It's funny how a week goes by and some people saying, oh, wow, what a steal from Carolina, what a get. And then time goes on and it's Nathan MacKinnon that makes him look good and all this. So the opinions have been fleshed out there during the week. He scores his first last night as a Hurricane. But I just wanted your thoughts on the deal as it was, and where he might go, because people have already been playing, cap simulator here in Edmonton and fitting him on this Oilers squad for next season. So your thoughts on the present and then perhaps the future to come with him.
I guess in the last week, everyone's figured out that Rantanen and Leon Draisaitl share an agent. So, the galaxy brain, the galaxy brain gets going on how that could work. I mean, why not? I mean, what I love about this trade, honestly, is it's very bold from basically everybody involved. There's huge risk on the Colorado end. I think just even for the psyche of the team, you saw Nathan MacKinnon speak right afterwards. It didn't seem to me that he had any idea this was coming, which is a little unusual. I had a GM from another team point out that if he was ever considering, that kind of move, he feels like he'd go to his leadership group and at least give them a small heads up. It's not like Nathan MacKinnon is making the trade. I don't think you go there for his opinion, but you might, at least try to soften the blow. And so, that's a pretty good team still in Colorado, but they're naturally reeling, even as good as Marty Necas is a player to come in and help sort of fill that void. So does that end of it on the Carolina side? You've only got a small window here. I mean, the only guarantee is the next 30 odd games plus whatever you play in the playoffs that you get with Mikko Rantanen, because of the shock value on his end. Even as great of a player as he's been, will he fit in there? Will he make a difference for them in a short window? And of course, ultimately, we'll start talking about, can they sign him, because that's their intention. So, I love the deal because it could go all kinds of different ways. At least one of those teams is probably going to be left with a bit of regret or second guessing, looking back and the reverse. And then if you're looking at free agency, to me, this sets up as, Mikko Rantanen, any loyalty he would have felt, in his contract decision. Because I think he was thinking, I'm going to just sign with the Avalanche here. Like, we got to go through a process. Maybe it doesn't look good. But ultimately he's going to stay with the team that drafted him and where he's had all that success. Now loyalty's out the window. I mean, he can choose 100% with a clear conscience, if you will, with an open mind. What matters to him? Is it lifestyle? Is it money? Is it a chance to win another cup? Which combination of those 3 or 4 things that go into most of those decisions. So I think he might actually get to July 1st, which is not a shot at Carolina. I just think, why would you give up, other than the fact they can send him to the 8th year, which is not nothing? The opportunity to go there and be a true superstar free agent in the NHL. I mean, we don't get that every year. And so I think this is compelling on all kinds of levels.
Chris, before we let you go, we do need your thoughts on the Calgary-Philly trade last night. Looked like two teams, still in the mix, trying to shake things up. What's next for the Calgary Flames, you think, if anything? And do you like the pickups that they made last night?
Yeah, I like them in the short term because obviously their team has probably outperformed some expectations. They put themselves certainly in a position to vie for a wild card spot. but they don't score, right? Like you look at the other teams that are playoff teams in the league, that the Flames lag behind them offensively. And, I think this clearly helps improve their attack. I mean, Andrei Kuzmenko, who they traded out, had 4 goals this season. So, he is the kind of player that's meant to score. It hasn't been working. And, I know Farabee's had an off year for the Flyers, but, between him and Frost, I do think it is going to give the Flames a little more juice here offensively as they try to get in the playoffs. It's the right message, I think, if you're in the GM suite to send to your team. Last year, Calgary traded a lot of guys, popular guys out of the locker room. When I talk about the psyche, when you're left behind, when a team's making those kind of moves, now you're bringing players in, I think, that can help in the short term. And, the Flames have a chance to get in the playoffs, I'd say, after this deal. As for Philly, I wonder where the next shoe drops. This to me looks for them like a cap clearing move. Obviously they're adding more draft capital to the pile for their organization, but they've cleared up some short-term and longer-term cap commitments, and knowing how that organization operates, they're always aggressive. So whether it's another move before the trade deadline or free agency, I think the Flyers are gearing up for something bigger down the road here.
As always, buddy, great catching up with you, and we'll do it again next week.
Right on. Go Kudas.
There we go. Yeah, this is the year for your CFL fantasy team,
I'm
buddy.
feeling a buzz.
I can feel it right now.
People in Birmingham are talking.
It's already gone national. I mean, Chris doesn't even live in Edmonton. He's out east, and they're talking about the Kudas.
How can you go against a jersey like this?